Who wants a pot of coffee? I just made coffee. You want a cup of coffee? Sure, there you go. Who wants coffee? Anybody else want coffee? Who wants coffee?
And now it's time for the man with the caffeine, the new tropics for the brain. It's Coffee with Mike. Hang in, hang tight, grab your cup, and let's get this thing started.
Everybody, welcome back to Java Chat. It's Coffee with Mike, and today we're going to be talking with somebody that's not in the normal arena of guests for podcasts. And the reason that I'm doing this is twofold. One is we don't hear enough about the behind the scenes things that go on. We always hear about the celebrity guys, you know, the big C-level dudes that are in software as a service, or they're working in, you know, technology, blah, blah, blah. In a way, this guy does too, but he actually makes it. He is the CEO of Fledging, fledging.tech. If you guys are wondering what the website is, they have a specific product that we'll get into a little later. His name is Ethan Summers. Ethan, thanks for hanging out with us on Java Chat today.
Hey, Mike, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, oh, good, he's got coffee. Yes.
It's called Java Chat for a reason, right?
Yes, sir, it is called Java Chat for a reason. We invite anybody to come with whatever beverage they want, but when coffee's there, it's like, oh, we're gonna have a good one today. Yeah, exactly. The idea of Java Chat is, you know, we get to know our guests, and you being a first timer, and I say this as a kind of hint that there's some possibility to future guest appearances as well, because boy, in the pre-show we came up with about 3 or 4 different subjects we can talk about.
I think we got some podcast series.
Yeah, I think we might have a podcast series rolling here, which is, most people would think, well, you would have that with an author or a coach. It's like, hey guys, there's all kinds of stuff that happens in the business world, and Ethan's got a ton of experience in a few different industries. And as we were talking about that, it's like we got into discussions around logistics, around finance, and all that kind of stuff. And I guess most people don't really realize that the behind the scenes guys got a lot of shit to do too, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. I think most business actually happens behind the scenes, and most of what you see on the front end with kind of advertising and the CEOs out front and center, I mean, that's more marketing work than the actual back end day-to-day operations of moving stuff across the country and getting stuff built.
Yeah, all day. So give us a little background on yourself. Tell us a bit about who you are, where you're from, and how'd you get to where you're at today?
Yeah, I tell people all the time, I'm doing the thing I wanted to do for the last 12 years. And that's funny because growing up, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I'm a military brat. You know, dad served 20th Group Special Forces in the Army.
Nice.
So we moved all over the Southeast. Yeah, this is my, I live in Birmingham, Alabama. This is my 4th time living here, just to give you a sense of the movement. So growing up kind of in that culture, you know, everywhere was home and nowhere was home, which is a lot of fun. You know, you get to be a lot of places, meet a lot of interesting people, you know, getting to, you know, wrestle and grapple with colonels in the Army when you're 10 years old is cool. Moving every 2 years and not having stable friends, not so great. So yeah, I landed, it's a whole lifestyle, man. So I landed at the University of Alabama because I was in Tuscaloosa growing up, graduated high school there, studying engineering just because that's what they pay smart people to go do. And I hated it. I mean, just hated everything about it. So I dropped out of that and shifted over to journalism, which made perfect sense for, you know, summer 2009. When newspapers were dying in mass. I'm sure you remember, newspapers are just dropping like flies.
Yep.
I didn't want to be a journalist. I was just very introverted. I like to write. So I wanted the skills, you know, the interview and the research and the writing, the communication. And I knew I'd figure out something.
Sure.
And so I was covering a seminar from the school's MBA program, working for the student newspaper to cover it. And one of the professors there, Lou Marino, he said that half of all new jobs in the country come from startups and small businesses. And if like light bulbs could materialize over heads, one would have dinged for me, because it was just like, oh, you know, that's incredible, right? So that's when I decided I wanted to get into business, and I didn't have any product ideas. I don't like doing sales, don't like doing marketing. So that pretty much left me operations. And I figured I'd point my career to being just a really, really experienced operator. You know, inventory, supply chain, finance, HR, recruiting, people management, all that stuff that like is not the sexy stuff that people like doing in businesses. And and did that through my career, and then landed with Fledging in 2019, right after they closed a funding round, and then got rapidly promoted up and became CEO in August of 2020. So that all sounds super linear. It's not.
It's funny because most of the podcasts that we have, it all sounds linear.
Mhm.
It's the stories in and around, what you had to do when you first got in, how you had to learn, the things you had to learn, the people that you had to learn from. I'm not so sure that all of a sudden that this is really the right path for me. Let's see if it
Mhm.
works out, kind of thing. And
Mhm.
how many people have taken side trips? So it's kind of like a D&D thing where you go do the side quests before you go take on the boss. And
Mhm.
yeah, the old meme is, here's what success looks like. This is what success looks like. This is
That's right. That's right. That's a fun example. So to graduate from my MBA program, you have to have an internship. They will not hand you a diploma without an internship. And so I'm getting an internship with the Small Business Development Center here in Birmingham, which is an extension of the Small Business Administration. And it's like April, right before the semester ends and the internship starts. And this is 2013. So that's when one of the government furloughs happened. Internships are canceled, funding is gone. So I'm sitting there April 14th, 15th, like, shit, I'm not going to graduate school.
Yeah.
And one of my professors says, hey, I've got this unpaid gig with a company called Georgia Pacific. I was like, isn't that a railroad? Like, no, it's an energy company. I was like, oh no, they make toilet paper. I think, well, shoot, like I have to graduate. I'll go do this. And it ended up being just the best first job I could have possibly had. I mean, I just learned and grew and got challenged all the time. They've got a great culture. And it's just to say, it's one of those moments of like, I'm sitting there like, I don't want to go work for this railroad. And I look up and it's the start of my entire career, right? Like it kickstarted me into operations.
That's it. That's insane. Well, and for those that don't, he mentions Georgia Pacific. People that know that's a paper company. People don't know that they're also a packing company. Like they make stuff for packing. It's not just paper. It's not just toilet paper. I mean, they're what, 9 figures at least a year?
I mean, they're cool 50 billion. They make lumber, gypsum.
More than that.
They make they make coffee cups. I mean, they make cardboard boxes and corrugated materials. If there's like everything. A tree involved, they touch it.
I'm sure. They've become they're one of they're paper conglomerate, if you will. But that's the kind of environment if you want to get into an internship, because usually, one, the internship is pretty well established on an SOP. 2, there's usually some cross training between the different companies and the different brands. Not always, but
that's right.
It's possible for you to learn more than just one operation, so that you become a bit more well-rounded. And this is for all the kids that listen to us that are, 18 to 25. If you're looking for an internship, sometimes going with the big guys is a great place to start. Doing what Ethan did after that is probably a progression to taking what you've learned and actually applying it in the real world. Ethan's running a company right now. It's a small startup. They've got, by the way, that base, insane. Love it.
I'm glad you love it. I love it too.
You have no idea, dude. My shit sits on that thing all day. I'm charging everything through that.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't even bother using my power strip anymore. I actually have openings on it now.
Oh, get rid of it. Throw it away. Send me a picture. Just throw it in the trash.
Yeah, there's only my computer pocket.
I love it.
So how did you find Fledging? I mean, how did that happen? What was the storyline there?
Yeah, so my wife and I were living in Atlanta doing the corporate thing, making a lot of money, getting promoted, having a good time, get kind of fat because it's easy to in Atlanta because you're making money and the food's incredible.
Oh, that's an understatement. Atlanta's got great food, dude.
It's not Vegas food, but dang, it's good food.
It's barbecue and it's good.
Oh, it's good. I don't know. I can do a quick shout out to Fox Brothers Barbecue. They have the best wings in Atlanta, just in case they hear this and want to sponsor me or something. But we looked up and said, Atlanta's cool, but Atlanta's established, and it's expensive to get bought in there. And we're from Alabama, so we figured we'd move back closest to home. And so we looked up and picked Birmingham because it's the biggest city in Alabama. And it was just such a cool moment, right? Like all these companies were coming up, and you were starting to hear about a startup scene. And there had been some successes here, but they were kind of low key and quiet. And some little companies ended up, about a year after we moved back, a company called Shipped happened.
Cool.
They got bought by for $550 million by Target. And then that guy spun off to something called Landing, and another guy had $1 billion exit with Therapy Brands. And so like our friends thought we were crazy for leaving Atlanta for Birmingham. And then a year later, you're hearing about $500 million, $1 billion startup exits. And we just want to be part of that.
I'm sure that must have gotten some of your friends' attention going, where?
Yeah. Of course, we'd bring them in, show them the food, show them the cost of living, show them the people. And they're like, I might need to move here.
Yeah, it's most people don't understand that Southern hospitality, even that has its own local flavor, no matter where you go. So. And it's always refreshing, like anytime I go to the South, it's like, oh man, I love the people down here. Damn it.
We recruited, not me, but somebody here in town recruited a company. The founder was from Israel, and she was in San Francisco, and we poached her to Birmingham. And she was interviewed about why she possibly left San Francisco for Birmingham. Don't we have no shoes and outhouses? And she said it's the closest thing she's ever found to a kibbutz outside of Israel. And that's just always stuck with me, is that sense of community and mutual well-being it's real here.
Yeah, that's the best. To me, that's the best part, when you have a community. It's one of the things that we work on here in Nevada. We're still a one-horse town.
Yeah.
The community is pretty tight depending on where you're at. And that's one of the initiatives that we do out here with the Real Vegas magazine.
Oh yeah.
Local influencers supporting local business. As everybody knows the Strip. Right? Yeah, as it should be. The idea is that, there's the Strip, and that's where the party happens. Cool. But there's still the rest of this community. And again, depending on where you're at, each community, when I'm on the south side, we have one flavor. You can walk down the street here and people will say good morning in the middle of a street, which is small town USA. You go out to Summerlin, you got all the posh living people out there, and there's another flavor out there. Again, still quite welcoming. Northwest, new flavor. Northwest is a completely new flavor. Same story. It's when you have community, it's easier to work. It's just easier because you're not. Some people stress about going home. San Francisco, they've got it. They're dealing with some stuff right now.
Yeah.
Still a great city. Don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's all ups and downs, and there's benefits to that scale and that intensity of capital and knowledge, and it's a beautiful place. But there's just also other ways to live life, and I think like Vegas is like that. Atlanta, Nashville, Birmingham, all these great startup towns. They're all just a different way to live life, and it's a different fit for different people. And I personally love being in Birmingham. I don't want to be in San Francisco.
Yeah, well, I'll probably have to come down there and visit. I got my cousin over in Huntsville anyway. So
Huntsville's great. Great.
This is what I hear. I've never been, and I've got to change that. That's a bucket lister for sure.
Yeah, wait till you see the giant rocket ships. It's awesome.
Well, I was actually invited as a kid.
Yeah.
To go to the NASA camp that was out there. I don't know if it's still open or not, but
it is.
Yeah. Again, bucket lister. Anyway.
But so I came to Fledging. So I landed at a hospital system in Birmingham just because I do sourcing and contracts, and that was my experience. So I did that for a couple of years. But what I told myself was, I'm pretty introverted naturally, and I told myself no matter what I did, I was going to get networked in Birmingham. So every time I saw a name or a thing, I just reached out and said, "Hey, can I talk to you?"
Yeah. That's the way to do it.
In 5 years, I've been told no one time. And I cold guessed the guy's email, and he emailed me back and very politely said, "Connect with me in 3 months. I'm very busy right now." And then 5 days later, his company got bought by Target for $550 million. And that's always stuck with me. Like, he doesn't even know me. I guessed his email. He didn't even just say no thank you. He messaged back and said, "Hey, I'm really busy. Please reconnect with me." 5 days later, he has a $500 million exit. Like, that's the vibe here. And that's the vibe that brought me to Fledging, right? Like, I remember seeing the founder pitch. He came out of a accelerator at UAB, the local university. And I told him at the time, I was judging his pitch, and I said, if I had $1 million, I'd invest in you right now. And so he called me about a year later and said, "Hey, I want you to come run e-commerce for us." And I said, "Yeah, let's go. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. And this is my chance to jump into the startup space with a rapidly growing consumer electronics company."
That time to now, how long was it before you got to the seat that you now sit and in the driver's seat?
So I joined June 2019. We just closed the funding round. So I came in, I was the first professional hire after that. And I became CEO in August of 2020. So I think that's about 14 months.
That's fast, dude.
Yeah, it wasn't my plan. I was really kind of coming in to do more COO stuff because that fits my experience. And I think the founders just, COVID was tough. We
Oh
run an
yeah.
international supply chain. We source components from Taiwan, Mexico, China, all over the place. And the business just got to be really, really technically difficult to manage. And the founders, they did an incredible job having the idea of premium electronics for everyone. It's that idea that like you should get to have an iPhone that doesn't cost $1,300 and that it's going to work well.
Yeah.
There's no reason this should cost a month's rent. And so that's a great idea. They did a great job founding the company, creating the brand, establishing the initial base of customers. But I think they looked up one day and thought, making a company and running a company are very different things. And it was just kind of the right place, right time to say, hey, I've been training for 10 years to run a company.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
Right on. I remember when we met at the Consumer Electronics Show just this past year.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that you made clear was we've resolved the logistic chain issue.
Yeah.
Anytime somebody says something like that, in my head, it's an immediate, these guys aren't only hustlers, they're problem solvers. Which
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Well, because logistics, we were talking about this in pre-show, the challenges that were happening during the pandemic, before the pandemic, when there was that panic buy and Georgia Pacific was trying to keep up with the amount of toilet paper just for, it was insane.
That's right.
And to be able to manage multiple channel sourcing, which you just mentioned, is definitely, that's a skill set. That's definitely a skill set. How did that, and in fact, that's kind of a good question. As a CEO, what kind of challenges have you been facing as of late within Fledging? As it relates to e-com, or as it relates to just simple operations?
Yeah. How much time do you have? I got to say, I got a dote on my team. One of the things I really was dead set on when I came into the CEO role was building a rock solid leadership team. And I got a head of operations who's got experience running labs and a background in neuroscience of all things. And he just he is one of the best operators I've ever worked with in my entire career.
That's cool.
Went out and recruited a fantastic head of marketing who you've met and know, who's just a dynamo at what she does. I got a head of R&D who lives over in Shenzhen, helping us navigate that environment. So really, really grateful for the leadership team I have. So it's a team sport for sure. That doesn't even count the rest of the team.
Right.
Course.
That Shenzhen element has got to be interesting.
It's a game changer. It's I think we'll talk about it in another segment, but it's his whole journey there from let's go to China to, oh God, the world closed, to now I'm stuck in quarantine for 5 months, is how we came up with the new product, the Spruce Charger. So if we can cover that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the next session for sure. What do you think are like some of your future aspirations as far as where you're at now and where you think you might be going?
Yeah, that's a great question. You'd asked about challenges, and my background's in supply chain and physical products. And I was joking the other day with one of our investors. I said, I don't know if what I want to do next would be in physical products because I know it, or would be way the hell away from physical products because I know it. It's tough. Supply chain's tough. Managing inventory and cash is tough. Quality matters so much because we can't just push updates. I know software as a service has its own challenges, but you can just push a patch. I got to recall and reship and remanufacture. So those are some of the big things. And what we found, the chip shortage is a good example. It jumped up and bit us. That's why we took that long delay last fall. But what we found is every time we invested in quality and treating people how they want to be treated, which is one of our values, making a premium device, it solved the problem. So
nice.
We solved the chip shortage by paying 15 more cents a chip for a higher quality chip. And there's an unlimited supply of this higher quality chip. For us, it's an extra $1.50 per unit. So who cares?
Right.
And it's the kind of thing where a Ford or a Tesla doesn't want to move into that space because they're buying a billion chips.
Yeah.
So that cost adds up. But every time we've invested in treating customers how they want to be treated and making a premium device, we've been able to solve our supply chain challenges.
Sweet. That's awesome. I had one more question for you, and it came while you were talking. Do you really think that this is where you belong? I mean, is this pretty much it for you?
Consumer electronics? I'm a big believer in Birmingham. It's kind of a comeback town. It's an old town, actually. It's pushing 200 years, and it's been a steel town that came up and collapsed and came up and collapsed, and now it's diversified into healthcare. Like, one of the first kidney transplants in the world was done at Birmingham.
Nice.
And fintech and construction tech and now startups, and so it's this great comeback town, and I really want to be a part of that. I love Alabama. It's a great state, beautiful state. It's got some challenges, and those are pretty well documented, especially economically, and in terms of a lot of people like me leave, right? They go to Atlanta and Nashville and Denver and Las Vegas and San Francisco, and there's nothing wrong with that. I get it, but I want this to be a better place, and for it to be a better place, I need to be here. People like me need to be here. We need to be helping. So whether it's creating a breakout success with Fledging and having that financial exit and that success, whether it's continuing to do this here and build intelligent manufacturing, or move on to the next thing and try and solve another problem, I think Birmingham and Alabama in the startup space is definitely where I belong, because I'm probably dumb for it. I just really love working on hard problems and seeing what comes out of it.
I don't think that's dumb at all. I think we need the people that are willing to work on the hard problems and being in community, being involved in community, whether you're a business or a nonprofit or what have you. That I was kind of hoping you would touch on that, because those things also matter. Most people don't realize that as the C levels, you're an internal leader, an external leader, and you're also a community leader. Everybody's looking to you for something, whether that's support financially, support emotionally, or something of that nature. And that's perfect. I'm glad you brought that up. Guys, we're going to take a quick 30-second break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other fun stories that Ethan's been through. Just back in 30 seconds. And we're back here, Java Chat, Coffee with Mike, sitting here with Ethan Summers. And on the break, we were just kind of talking about it's not always easy being a podcast host. You have to come up with freaking questions on the fly. And yet at the same time, you have the other podcasts that are, very well produced. They have a format. What I've learned here is that a lot of times the good golden nuggets, the stuff that you probably wouldn't get when you're super formatted, you miss out on certain things. So I've kind of gone the other direction. And while we're not a long format kind of play, I do like free flow. And the reason for that is because my guests are all intelligent in their own right, both in experience and in a lot of them in theoretical knowledge as well. Ethan's no exception. He's one of those guys that's been there, done that, but he also understands how everything works. And over time has had other people take him under their wing, and show him the ropes and give him the, what we like to call, give him the old what for. Who are some of those people that influenced you through your career that like you got either the epiphany, aha moments, or you kind of like, oh, okay, well, that's just how that works, or maybe not. You know what I'm saying? That kind of thing. Who are some of those people?
Man, that'd be a long list. I got to do the obligatory mom and dad shout out. They raised me, the right way and as best they could. And the thing I always appreciated from them, I'm talking like they're gone, they're still around, I'm going to go see them for lunch tomorrow, is that they really taught me to love learning. And so I learned from a very early age to learn and be comfortable with that process of not knowing and being wrong, because there's just more to learn. And that sets a strong foundation. I think that's something anyone can do, is just learn to love learning, and you're going to be in good shape. Growing up, I had all the kind of obligatory sports coaches and stuff like that, some really striking figures. But as I think professionally, there's a couple of people I would think of, and one is a business professor at the University of Alabama named Lou Marino. He's an entrepreneurship professor, and he's the guy who did the seminar that I covered that made the light bulb appear above my head. And he was just a classic blend of academic and experiential, right? Like, he had the PhD and he'd done the thing from the good schools and very academic, but he also ran the businesses and did the work and set up the stuff with students. And it just struck me as like this perfect collaboration. We hear all the time about compromise, right? You see that in politics. Whatever your stance is, you got to compromise. And when you compromise, no one has anything they wanted. No one's won. Versus collaboration, which is, we're going to get together and we're going to figure out how to make this work as best as we can for everyone. And he just got that stuck in my head. And he also I think maybe saw a student at the time who was kind of interested and engaged, but not sure what to do. And he made sure that I had opportunities in class and with a student-led consulting program we set up, and stuff like that, just to get that experience that's so vital when you're 18, 19, 20, 21 and don't know which way is up. So he's one of the first ones that really jumps out at me. He's just a great guy and a great professor.
That's a that's a unicorn, by the way.
Yeah.
Because most times, what was funny is that actually the University of Phoenix actually took that model where if you were going to be a professor, you had to be also a currently working professional. Like you're gonna be teaching entrepreneurship, you need to be an entrepreneur. If you're gonna be a, like my critical thinking professor was a trial attorney. You want to talk about interesting class.
Oh man, I bet the stories they tell about everything.
And what was the best part about it was at that time I was still back in Hawaii, and most of my classmates didn't quite grasp critical thinking until towards the end of the class. Because in the beginning, everybody comes in and you ask a question, and the immediate response of any human is emotional by experience.
That's right.
This is what I know. This is what I've been, and this is how I perceive it. So it's a perception or a perspective, not necessarily a critical perspective, just one that exists. And I remember talking with him one night on the phone, and this will forever stick with me because I actually really liked him. My first thought was, I ever get in trouble, that's who I'm hiring. But we were on the phone one night. He goes, I really have to thank you. And I'm like, why? What did I do? I mean, I'm just a student. He goes, you're the only student that understands what's going on in this class. You actually think critically. You don't take anything emotionally. And I'm like, oh, don't get me wrong. I'm an emotional, passionate Hawaiian. There's a lot of stuff that I have some real deep-seated passions about. He's like, yeah, but in our class, we've touched on a couple of those, and you've been able to keep yourself separated from it. So this is what's missing from your generation. And it was funny because I'm a Gen Xer. For the most part, anybody that's a Gen Xer, we look at most stuff and we go, yeah, I don't care. I don't care. It's your triggers are not my issue. I'm not going to tiptoe. I'm not going to tiptoe around you. That's your problem. You go figure out how to deal with it. That's that's kind of how we are. The next generation completely flipped that whole switch, and it's like, well, now you have to think about me. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's just not. One, business doesn't get done that way. There's a way to do business, and that's not it. Two, nobody gets anywhere by tiptoeing around everybody else. Nobody talks. Nobody gets the issue out on the table. I mean, if you're in business with somebody and you have a problem with them, and you never say anything because you're worried about how they feel, you're failed in the next 6 months or less.
That's where I think it's interesting, because I am very much a millennial. I was born in 1989, so I'm like right smack in the middle of that. But I'm also raised.
God, I'm old. That's when I graduated, dude.
I'm also raised military, and I won't tell you what year I graduated high school. But I was raised military and kind of had what I think is a good upbringing. And I think the point that gets missed so much, and this is something I appreciated from a lot of my Georgia Pacific mentors, is like the personal element matters, and the emotion in the background, that all matters so much. It is not a cop-out to not do the damn work. Like, let's acknowledge it. Like you just called out that everything's an emotional response first and then becomes a logical response. And that's 100% right. That doesn't mean stop because you had an emotional response. It means recognize you had an emotional response and then get to the right answer. And I had I could name a list of them, but at Georgia Pacific, I had, I think about like Lindsay Hickman and Mary Grizzard and Sandy Laundrie and Steve Arnson and Todd Zielinski and all these people who I worked for. Just incredible leadership, and they were all aligned around, because it's a very values-centric company.
Sure.
They're very much aligned around the human element, and that never got in the way of hard conversations and getting the work done. And that's where I think there's this sweet spot that's missing between the generations, and even in the newer generations, of like, it shouldn't be an either or, it should be a yes and, right? Like, we're humans, we're squishy, we're emotional.
Yeah.
Let's be honest about that and get some shit done.
Well, the best part of it, we had a meeting yesterday. We were meeting with a larger digital brand who we might be partnering with on the magazine side. And that exactly came up. It's like, we are not an or kind of organization. Do we work with this company or their competitor? Well, that disservices one from the other. it's a magazine. Everybody needs to advertise. Why is it an or? Why not have an and feature them both?
Right.
Let
Why does
the
it have to be competitive versus collaborative?
and that's it. So I learned a term years ago from one of my mentors who unfortunately is passed.
Mhm.
And it was a term he came up with called co-opetition.
Interesting.
Cooperative competition where we both benefit. We're going to compete, no
Mhm.
doubt, but we're in the frame of how do we improve each other so that competition benefits the marketplace.
That's the classic Coke versus Pepsi battle, right? Is
Yes.
would one of them like to gobble the other one up? Sure. The two of them though make the entire market, and
And
their
they
branding,
both
their marketing, their lifestyle, it all supports the other one.
they freaking know it too. It's
Oh
kind of
yeah,
interesting
yeah.
because if you look at their marketing campaigns, they don't really cross over. Yeah,
No, yeah.
they're the drink of choice, but one caters to one side, one caters to the other, and it's like, you know, who's another one that does that? Chevron and Shell.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean, the big car companies, especially you look
same
at
story. Yeah.
the pickup truck space, they, instead of going, Ford does it a little bit with the number one pickup for 50 years, but they go different directions and different styles, and they're not going head to head. They're saying, if you want this kind of truck, pick a Ford, and if you want this, pick a Chevy, and fine.
Or a Ram
And
or
I love
whatever.
that co-opetition. I'm gonna have to write that down.
Yeah, it was Bernie Sanders coined it. He not Bernie Sanders. God, Bernie's last name escapes me. I'll find it and I'll post it in the comments, you guys. But he was a good man. He started up a thing called CEO Space. He came up with that term, and dude was brilliant because he was in the financial world.
Mhm.
Very smart man.
Mhm.
Actually it was like an MBA in a weekend kind of thing with the
Oh
CEO
wow,
Space,
wow.
and literally would bring in a lot of big people in networking, coaching, legal, finance, and all that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
usually by the end of the weekend, people would be leaving with investment checks, anywhere between a couple grand to $100,000. Kevin
Yeah,
Harrington used to happen in every once in a while looking for deals.
yeah.
Yeah, so it was a real thing. You mentioned about 5 names. Who out of
Yeah.
those 5 stuck out the most?
And that's hard. My comment is just really interesting
I
because,
I try to ask the hard questions just to keep it going.
oh, of course, yeah. So I came in and I'm 24 and young and dumb and haven't done anything. And I had one boss named Sandy for like 2 months. I mean, it was very quick changeover. And so I didn't spend a lot of time with her, but I remember sitting quietly through a team meeting. I came up to her at the end and said, "Hey, what about this?" And she said, "Well, why didn't you speak up?" I was like, "Well, I've been here for 10 seconds. Leave me alone." And she says, "I don't really care how young you are. We hired you for a reason and we want you to participate." So it's one of those, like, I didn't spend a lot of time with Sandy, but I will die remembering that interaction. Um, and then I had some just different bosses who went out of their way to develop me. One of the big ones is probably a guy named Todd Zielinski. He was
Does
head of
that name
global
sound
sourcing
familiar?
for Zelensky,
Yeah.
president of Ukraine.
Spelled the same way?
Slightly different. It's a very common Polish Ukrainian name.
Okay.
It's like Smith or Muhammad or Chi
Gotcha.
or Lee or something like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I worked for him for almost 2 years. He picked me out of one group and into the other and kind of grew me up into a category manager. And this guy was managing global sourcing. He's on the phone to China 7 days a week. He's got a couple young kids. He's commuting an hour. He's managing, I don't know, 10, $12 billion in spend. And every one-on-one I had with him, we had one every 2 weeks for 2 years. Every one-on-one I had with him, I was just like the center of his universe. I mean, the phone would be put away. His boss would walk in and he'd say, "Hey, can this wait? I'm meeting with Ethan." And it wasn't about that, I was getting all the attention. It's that from him, I just learned this, like, I try to learn this total absorption with what you're doing. He was so focused. And he probably laugh and be like, "No, I'm distracted." But he was so focused, and it was cool from a business perspective, but also it was like the most humanizing experience I've had. Because I'm some 25-year-old managing a little team for him, a couple $1 million in spend. And he's sitting there saying, "For right now, this is the most important thing in the world I could be doing. And if it's not that important, I'm going to cancel the meeting." And that just completely shifted. That goes to what we were talking about. That's that perfect blend of the human element and the practical business element, because he was being so human while being so effective. And that's just, I mean, I remember telling him I was leaving Georgia Pacific to come back to Birmingham, and it was heartbreaking because just working for the guy was just fantastic.
Is he still there with GP?
Yeah, he's been there for a while now. He's a Duke guy, which I always like to give him grief about. But yeah, he's still there. Most of that team is still there.
That's telltale to the credibility of them as leaders and as business managers. That's a huge thing.
Exactly
That somebody,
right,
yeah, it's. I think the entrepreneurial world needs to really understand, and the smaller businesses really needs to understand. Being like that will not just keep your company alive; it will attract the right kind of talent.
That's right.
Because you will know your reputation will get around. Hey, I worked for Zelensky, and that man was friggin' amazing. Are you still there?
Oh,
No,
yeah.
but I heard they're looking. Somebody's jumping on Indeed in the next 5 minutes.
Funny story. I was getting hired at UAB. I was leaving Georgia Pacific to get hired at UAB, and there's a guy on the team who I'm backfilling him because he's moving to a new role, and he worked for Todd Zelensky like 20 years before, different company, different context, and like I could not. And this is not a very effusive or bubbly or outgoing guy. The guy who was on the team. I couldn't get him to shut up about Todd. And he said it was when they were making the hiring decision, he went to my new manager and said, like, you've got to hire this guy. If Todd's signing off on him, like, you got to hire him. Which got me home and in the door and into a good environment. It's like it stuck with me too, just the value of actual reputation, not that BS marketing reputation, just like your actual reputation is. I'd never encountered it like that in my career yet. It was striking.
I get a kick on. So you mentioned reputation and marketing, which is interesting because you can have the greatest marketing reputation and be the shittiest dude. You could be the shittiest dude and have and actually be really worth your salt in marketing. You know, it depends on how that plays. I still have awards sitting on my floor. I've never put them up on the wall, and half of those were because I had to pay to go there.
Yeah,
I'm like, nah, till I get a 2-pencil award. I'm not putting anything on my wall. That's in our world, that's the epitome. If you get a 2-pencil award, you have made it, because you can't buy that one. You have to freaking earn it.
Totally earned. Yep.
Oh yeah. So it's when you have a reputation like that in business, though, as a leader, and people are from who said he was good? Get that kid in here, because it's your reputation as a human catalyst becomes super valuable to whoever else may be hiring the resource that you no longer have. Provided, of course, they make it through the interview process.
And especially in the startup space, keeping the resource, right? Like people come and go and they get picked up for new opportunities. And that's what you want as a boss, right? Like you've developed someone and they're incredible and they come to you one day and said, hey, I just got a job offer for $1 billion company that's twice my salary. That's the dream, right? And that reputation goes into that development for them and they carry that forward with them. But also I think it sticks in their mind as motivation. Like it was great for me to get in with that job with him, but also like, that stuck with me every day at UAB. Like I'm representing this man who I deeply respect. My shit better be right.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah.
But it speaks volumes too for you as a leader, because that just happened. We were talking before the show. That just recently happened. Somebody came and said, hey, such and such is offering me this. And it's like, yeah, you go. You need to leave. Bye.
If you don't leave, I'm going to fire you. So
yeah, exactly. It's like you will be jobless here in the next 5 minutes if you don't accept that other one. But that's, again, you're essentially carrying on a bit of a legacy, if you think
absolutely
by being just like him and sharing that kind of unicorn attitude with it. I hate using the term unicorn. In fact, my Dan hates that word too, because it's not unknown. It's not a new concept.
No, it's just a conscious choice. You just have to choose to treat people the right way. It's totally doable. I mean, it's not always easy. There's days where I'm like, damn it, I have to backfill another person who I trained up, who just got poached for more money than I'm now paying myself. There's that moment of frustration, but it's just a conscious choice of like, this is the right way to treat people. And this is what gets them while they're here to do kick-ass work too. I remember one of the GP names I mentioned was a woman named Mary Grizzard, who was just also an incredible leader. That whole team is stacked with great leaders. And I was frustrated one day because I was trying to deploy a bidding software to some stubborn facilities. And I said, I don't understand. It's just a system. Like, why don't they adopt it? It's not a people problem. And she laughed at me. And she said, Ethan, everything in business is a people problem. And I just froze like, duh, why?
What just happened?
Everything we're doing is about people, because of people in the way, or to help people. You wouldn't do this stuff if it wasn't serving people, or you weren't trying to get people to stop doing something, right?
Yep. There's the whole systems run companies, people run systems.
That's right.
And if the people are frustrated, they're the ones you got to serve, not the system.
That's right.
You might have to. Systems are obviously way easier to adjust because they're emotionless. People, a little bit of a tough. It's a little tougher because you got to get their emotions involved and get them to actually see it your way. And it's what's funny is that, and that sounds wrong, but that's to me, that's one of my mentors taught me that everything's pretty much a discussion in philosophy. And philosophy is philosophy defined in business etiquette is leading a person to a truth, whatever that truth may be. So it's getting your perspective explained in a manner that they can understand it and catch it. You know, it's the butterfly.
I like that a lot. I like that perspective a lot.
Yeah, it's because it's one of those deals where if you can lead somebody to a truth, now mind you, this can also be manipulative, so you have to be really careful. But if you can lead somebody to a truth that improves their being, whether that's at work or at home or play, whatever, you have led them to a better perspective. Period. Now they're going to take that truth. Yeah,
you've led yourself too. I mean, teaching people and helping people is. I was going to say, we're talking about mentors, and it's easy to talk about people who are older than you and have more experience, but some of my best mentors, like my wife, we're the same age. She does something very different than I do professionally. She's a very different person than I am. I've got friends who are my age. I got people younger than me, and that kind of leading people to truth thing, that's not owned by someone who's magically some number of years older than you or younger than you.
It is not the guru at the top of the mountain that only holds the secret.
I mean, if you want to go with Guru Patrick, you can. That's great, but you can get mentorship from. I mean, my 7-year-old nephew said something to me one day about being nice to people, and I was like, "Uh-oh." The 7-year-old just dunked on me. Like, I need to up my game and pay attention. But mentorship can come from anywhere, as long as you're open and vulnerable to it, willing to be led to truth, like you said.
It's interesting because, like, right now I'm being reverse mentored. I've never been in the print industry. I've always been digital, right? Being involved with an actual magazine as their business editor is a completely new, like, my head's still spinning, dude. And I'm having a blast going through it. The mentor I have, I'm 50, she's 42. And she's just like, she's been in this for 20 plus years. So she knows the print game inside and out and knows what to do and what not to do. So I'm like trying to sponge. Anytime she talks about anything in print, I'm like, okay, how's that work? Okay, how do you do this? And she lays it down. There's a lot of similarities between the two, and there's a ton of dissimilarities between the two.
Those dissimilarities, they can pile up.
Yeah, and without getting too far into it, I have enjoyed so far working with her. She has been absolutely, I'll just say it, she's an absolute sweetheart of a person in how she disseminates the information to me. Like, if I send her a question, I'll either get an email, a little later in the day, or she'll call me. And I'm just like, and I told her already, I said, I only pick up the phone for certain people. So if you think it's that important, you call me. I will pick up the phone unless I'm in a meeting. And she's tested it a couple times and knows that I wasn't kidding. So it's all good. But these are mentorship, and this concept of reverse mentorship is extremely important. I mean, you just said your nephew gave you something. Being a mentor doesn't, in the old days, being a mentor meant you're with me on the daily, and you're going to listen to what I do and watch what I do, and
almost like an apprenticeship model.
And that's an apprenticeship. That's what that is. But when you're talking about mentoring, that can happen from any place. Most mentors don't even know they're mentors. It just happens.
I mean, I'm a big believer. You can you can learn from anyone. Sometimes that is learning something not to do.
Yeah.
You can learn the wrong way, but you can learn from, if you have an engagement with someone and don't learn from them, that's probably on you. Because at bare minimum, it's a reinforcement of, okay, this was the right thing to do. And I knew that, and I just got reinforced. But you can get mentorship from anywhere, but you got to be open to it.
Yeah.
That's just, I mean, I'll be candid. We talked earlier about how this all sounds like a linear path. It's not. That's one of the challenges I'm having right now is, I have to grow personally faster than my company does. And I have to be more willing to be wrong and embarrassed faster to lead my company there and create that space for them. And it's a constant humility challenge, because at some point you're just like, damn, I'm sick of, why doesn't the other thing change for once? But it's just the reality, I think, of, like you said, kind of being led to truth is, do you want to be right or do you want to know truth? Do you want to feel correct or do you want to get to the best thing or the best quality? And if you want to get to the best quality, you got to keep changing, but it's uncomfortable.
It's kind of funny you mentioned that, being vulnerable and being willing to be wrong, which is definitely a challenge for some leaders, is where do I let my vulnerability come out? How do I, without making everybody think I'm some weak, leader, where do I show my vulnerability? And it was funny yesterday, one of the posts that we put up for OMG on Facebook, it says, great leaders don't let their mistakes go unresolved. And I don't know who quoted it because it came off of Canva, and I looked at it and I went, I don't care who it's from. Thank you for whoever coined it, but damn, the amount of truth.
Put some quotes on it and slap it up there. Go.
Exactly. And it reminded me of the book Extreme Ownership. Have you read that yet?
Jocko Willink, yeah, I love that book.
And he's got another new one on leadership as well that just came out, I think, earlier this year or late last year. I haven't grabbed it yet. And there's another book by another guest of ours by the name Marty Strong called Be Nimble, Navy SEAL mindset and stuff like that. I got a copy for you. It's all good.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
Oh yeah, we'll get it out here in a little bit. And he's definitely somebody to follow. Anybody that's listening to this, go follow Marty. The man's loaded with friggin' wisdom. He's awesome. But that whole thing
that ties back real quick to that experience thing. That's something I love about learning from military leaders is you can agree or disagree with what they say, how they sound, what they believe. Rubber does not meet the road anywhere more than when you're running into a building with a gun to fight a guy with a gun. I mean, there's nothing theoretical about that. That is real experience. And I don't think maybe valued enough.
In their case, you're running into a building with a gun to face more than a few guys with their guns.
Right. That's right.
That are all standing there waiting for you to come through the door. The coolness of what that whole quote talks about, though, is you just said it, being willing to be vulnerable. David Meltzer talks about it too. It's like, what of your ego is stopping you from succeeding? Because all you're doing is putting yourself in front of the success and going, I should have it, and success looking at you going, but you're not ready. If you're not ready, how can we come to you? How can I be there? You don't have it yet. So a leader, somebody that's looking at, whether that's a charge, company, or whatever, has to be able to say, you know what, that last charge, we kind of messed up. I forgot to call out a flank. Let me go to some of my leaders who are under me and have them tell me what they saw. And if they're good leaders, they'll go to their front line and they'll go, okay, we missed something somewhere. I'll take the responsibility for it. What did I miss? And it's amazing to see what humans will do when they're just like, wait, you're not going to shoot me for that?
Oh, it creates this almost emergent culture, right? Like the culture just comes out of these actions, because you can't make culture. You can't sit down and script culture. It just creates this environment of just people being willing to say, yeah, I effed up. And I struggle with that because I lose track of how much of a chilling effect I can have on my team. Because the way I talked to my last CEO, I would just say whatever I wanted. That's just how I am. But not everyone's like that, and they shouldn't be. And you have to create that space of accountability and lead and say, I'm going to be the first person to admit a screw up here, just so everyone sees that screw ups don't get you killed. It's not about covering your screw up. It's about, getting to the right solution.
What's funny is going back to our friends in the military, Somebody screws up, somebody usually dies. We don't have to deal with that in business, thankfully. A career might die, but not a person. That really speaks to, again, being the kind of leader that is really human centric. I think it was the word that came up earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
As long as we're aware of what's going on and being the mentors that we should be, we're producing a new generation that's not a generation of ages, but a generation of humans. Because the generational studies talks about, the world, the oldest generation, the Gen Xers, the millennials and stuff like that. The kind of generation that we as mentors can create is the operations generation, the marketing generation. This is I'm probably going to get doxxed for this, but this is a different concept. We're creating a community. It doesn't matter what generation you're out of. As a mentor, I could care less if you're 15, I could care less if you're 25, 35, 45, 75. If you're still contributing, you're a part of this new generation for this company. And we have a whole community to serve.
Have you read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
No, that sounds freaking cool though.
It's dense, man. It's a modern philosophy book, and I put it off for years because it is. I read textbooks for fun. That book is dense.
Is it?
But what he sets up is this kind of philosophy of quality, and he talks about kind of art and business and life, and he talks about quality as kind of this concept of God or the universe, whatever your religious belief is. And he says you talk about truth, and it made me think of it is truth is quality. Is this the best thing it can be? And it's that moment where you see like a sunset or a painting or a quarterback connect with a wide receiver or a dog catch a bone or whatever, and you just know that's good. And that's what I've tried to anchor my career around to varying effect, is like, it's not about me. It's not even really about the team or the goals. It's like, was this good? Was this as good as it could be? And if it's not, we got to get there. And if it is, don't mess with it because it's good.
Somebody asked me in an interview question once, and I'm pretty sure it's what landed me the job. What's your definition of quality? And I sat there and I leaned back a little bit and I thought for a second. I was like, the best possible product or service you can deliver at that moment in time. And he sat back and he looked at me like, by the way, I think I was in my early 20s.
That's a good answer.
And he sat back, this guy's like 35, 36, and he sits back and he goes, that's a hell of an answer. I've never heard anybody come up with that one. And I'm like, was that okay? He goes, there's no wrong answers on these. I want to know where your head's at. And about a month later, I got a call saying, hey, you can start whenever you're ready. And that, by the way, that was a job in logistics. That wasn't marketing. It was operations. I was literally jumping into logistics at that time.
You know what's funny? There's some supply chain programs like University of Tennessee is like this, where it's really common and that's a top 5 like national supply chain program. It's really common for someone to be a supply chain marketing double major, because what they've done is they've integrated and said marketing is just the next to last stage of supply chain, right? Like you build it, you make it, you develop it, you tell people about it in marketing, you sell it to them, and you deliver it. And that for me that's a great collaborative perspective. Like, it's so easy to think of marketing and ops as enemies, and no, they should be best friends.
It's marketing and sales that are usually enemies. That's the two that are always at each other's throats.
I'll leave my sales jokes alone. But if you're not collaborating, that you talked about leaders don't leave their problems unresolved. If things aren't collaborating, there's a problem, and that problem has to get resolved, because we're not in it, especially on the same team, the same payroll. You're not in it to compete with each other. We're in it to collaborate for one goal we're trying to achieve.
Absolutely. Hey guys, we're going to take one more 30-second break, and when we come back, we're going to chat a little bit more about Fledging, the company itself, what it produces, and this cool little box that freaking charge anything. Literally. I'm kind of surprised you don't have a little battery port in there to do rechargeables, but don't start that now.
Well, that's 2.0. That's 2.0. Don't give it away.
I know. Just for you guys that didn't see what he just did, he just kind of did the peace sign, and I'm looking at him. I'm like, no, you can't be bringing that out now. Just hang on a second. Anyway, we'll be back in 30 seconds. We'll talk more about what's going on with Fledging. Hey guys, back Coffee with Mike, Java Chat, sitting here with Ethan Summers, CEO of Fledging. a very interesting company as a manufacturer of technology. You're actually like the first tech manufacturer, because we usually talk with mostly SaaS companies. And this has been a great conversation. Give me an idea of what Fledging is about. What's the story first behind the company, and then what is it that you guys are doing, and what are you looking to do?
Yeah, so we were founded in 2018 on the concept of premium electronics for everyone. And what that means is, we exist in this digital world. If you've ever left your phone at home for the day, you know what's up. Like, it's easy to say, oh, I can't tweet or check TikTok, but really email, online banking, medical healthcare, figuring out where your kids are, maps, etc. It's hard to live in this world without tech.
Yep.
And what we see is two models. You see this guy's model. Yep. Apple, we're gonna get 85% gross margins on this thing and load it with software that kills it every 2 years. You have to buy a new one, but dang, does it work well while you have it?
Sure.
And it costs a ton of money. Or you see the gas station charger model, where you pick up a little $5 thing and it's going to work for 10 seconds and you expect it to fall apart. And it's a very polarized space. You essentially have Chinese manufacturing or Apple, Samsung.
Yeah.
It's not great. And so we got founded, our founder was in a PhD program at UAB and his MacBook died. And, he didn't have the money to buy a new one because it's like $2,000. And he figured out that he could buy some parts and essentially make his own solid state drive for it. And he fixed his own MacBook for like $150.
No way.
Yeah. And so naturally, he didn't do his homework, turned around and sold the drive and started a business. And he was actually revenue positive from the time he had his first product idea because he sold it.
By the way, guys, this is the first time I'm hearing this story. I mean, we met back at CES and I did not know this is how this all began. This is typical.
Yeah, it's a wild story. Yeah.
This is typical entrepreneurship. Anytime somebody comes up with a challenge, and I just wrote about this too, crisis creates leaders, which you'll read about in that book.
Perfect.
This kid comes out of left field with like a $150 solution to a $2,000 problem.
Yeah.
This is how entrepreneurship works.
And what's wild is we figured out, he's from Beijing. He's from Beijing. He landed in a city called Pell City here, which is northeast of Birmingham, and then came to UAB for school and just never left. So you get this kind of classic, immigrant American story about wanting to come to the U.S., launch your career here and stay here. And 14 years later, he's still in Birmingham, was still working with me. And what's wild is he figured out that we could earn a pretty good profit margin selling that product and still sell it at a fair price. And that's where the mission premium electronics for everyone came from, is we realized we could earn a bunch of money and still give people a good deal. Why not do that? That's what it should be. And so we drove that to about 1.1 million in seed funding. And what we were always trying to do was build this mass market, future-proof, high value, high performance product, high margin product that anyone could use. And at the time we had this idea for something that had kind of onboard storage and data and power, and we figured out it was impossible to make, which led us to the Spruce Charger. And for the folks, if you're looking at video, I'm holding one up now. It is a desktop charger, which sounds simple. What it does is it gets rid of all the other stuff on your desk. You can throw away your power strip, you can throw away your MacBook charger and all your other chargers. And this thing's going to sit here with 140 watts. And mine right now is charging the MacBook I'm talking on, a second monitor, a lamp. I got my iPad plugged in, and it was wirelessly charging my phone before I took it off the stand. It's doing all that at once. And that's the kind of thing we wanted to build. It's what we were funded to build. It's mass market. Anyone can use it. I don't care if you're Samsung, Apple, Dell. I don't care if it's a battery pack, a breast pump. I don't care what you're charging. If it needs power, we got you. And you don't need to know anything technically. It's got the wireless charging built in. It's got a nice little form factor. It's not an ugly lump of plastic. So this is the kind of thing we wanted to make. We're selling it for $125 right now, which is more expensive for a charger. But we firmly believe you'll look up 10 years from now and say, wow, I only paid $125 from that. I'm still using it. That's the kind of product we make.
It's a definite premium product. I was blessed with being able to have one of the models that they had there at CES. Ethan was kind enough to say, here, try this. Everything's on it. He's not kidding.
Well, this is the product where we fixed the chip shortage by buying nicer chips. And that didn't just get us access to these little ports on the side. I mean, it added a max of 10 more watts per port. So by
Wow.
investing in quality, we got access to the chips we needed, but also we just made a better product. So that means, other than, especially if you own a MacBook, there's no MacBook that won't easily charge while also charging your other stuff.
No, not at all. That's so. This is the new progression to powering your technology.
Mhm.
Most people think that that's RAM, that's all the memory and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, well, if it doesn't have electricity, it doesn't work. So
Right.
how do you get it charged up fast enough? Because those are fast charging ports, from what I'm
Oh
noticing.
yeah.
My phone's
we
charged in less than an hour, dude. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
The power delivery protocol we use is smart. It can sense where the largest device is. It'll push power there. So a lot of multi-port chargers, let's say you got 4 ports and 40 watts, you plug in 4 devices, it's going to get 10 watts each.
Yeah.
That's not helpful.
No, especially if
I don't want
your
my
laptop's
phone to
pulling
be
12 or
tracking.
14. Yeah, exactly. It's you end up losing. Well, you
It's
end up
not
losing.
staying on. It's not staying. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
Exactly. And so we just tried to build it. We tried to build the product we wanted to make, the product we want to use. And the story was, our head of R&D, it was March 2020. And we were sending him to Shenzhen to just be on the ground to do R&D there. And he went home to hug and kiss his mom and say goodbye. And of course, the world shut down. So he spent, 3 months living in her basement. And when I say one outlet, I don't even mean 2 ports. I just mean one
out
to power all. Yeah, half an outlet basically.
Yeah.
And he said, "Dang, I just wish I had a charger that would fix this." And so then he lands in Shenzhen and gets stuck in quarantine again. And then he tests positive for COVID, which was negative, a false positive. So this guy spends like 5 months stuck in a hotel room.
Oh my gosh.
And that's where this idea came from of, why should I have to fight this battle? Just have this thing, have the Spruce Charger. I don't care what you're powering. You carry this around, you're good to go.
Yeah, and I think fits, guys, if you look at, again, hold that up for me if you would. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, look how small that is compared to his hands. This thing can, and then you have that.
This is iPhone 13, by the way. Like,
it's small enough that you can take it with you freaking anywhere.
Yeah.
If you're going out on vacation, that's what you take with you. Even if you're going to Europe, just get an adapter. You'll have this available. You won't have to play with multiple adapters to charge your stuff. Just one. You plug that in, and that's what you plug all your stuff into. Simple.
And just to talk about the ease of use too, like, we built in all the power management, so the surge protection you don't have to worry about. And then we built it for an international market. That is a global standard AC port. You can be in Zimbabwe, Japan, Switzerland, or Brazil. Go to your store, get an AC cable for your country. It's $5. Plug it into the back of this thing. It's going to work anywhere in the world.
See, that just made the $125 that much more valuable. There's a huge argument for getting one just to have it, whether you're at home. If you're a road warrior, that is what you need to take with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I make it, so obviously I'm selling, the thing I made, and I love it. But I went out last summer and raised $500,000 to remodel Fledging from very B2C and very solid state drive into more B2B and all about Spruce. And those investors gave us the money because of what we showed them here. And the people who own it, or the people who have bought it, we have a less than 2% return rate on all the units we've ever deployed. And that's just because of a minor issue we fixed in production. People love this thing when they get their hands on it. The price can be a little bit sticker shock. And I promise you, if you don't like it, cool, go buy a $40 one. In 6 months, Spruce will be waiting on you when you get tired of dealing with the $40 charger.
Well, and yeah, because you're gonna end up buying 2 more before you end up getting the Spruce. And guess what? You're still at $120. So you might as well just make the investment and just get it done.
Absolutely right.
That's pretty cool. Who's the? We already mentioned the road warriors. This is good for. This is also probably good for the vacationing family, because they all have, everybody's got a phone.
Families are major. You sit down and the mom, dad, and 2, 3 kids can all charge at once, charge your different stuff, iPads and batteries and all that. Flex remote employees, obviously.
Yeah.
Road warriors are one thing, and that's a whole lifestyle, but also there's people who, they don't know if they're going to be at the home office, the work office, I don't know, the daycare, the airport. They just don't know. And so this makes it very worry-free, because you got it and it doesn't matter. If you can find one outlet, you're good to go.
Sweet. I won't give away 2.0 because we kind of accidentally talked about it a little bit, but when it comes out, you'll need to come back and do an update so we can talk about it again and talk about some of the other stuff that we were talking about. Because this has been a fun conversation. I really want to thank you for coming and hanging out with me. And you're a good CE bro. We really enjoyed that about you.
No, I appreciate it, Mike. This was a lot of fun. Definitely appreciate the chance to come and chat with you. And it's interesting all the different topics that come up in a business conversation, that life. It's to do to be good at what we do. It takes a lot.
So where can people find Surge?
Yeah. So you can find us on Amazon. Just go to amazon.com and search for the Spruce Charger. You can also search for Fledging and find us. You can find us at fledging.tech. Now that's Fledging with one L, not two.
Yep.
And then one of the interesting business models is if you're running a business and you want this for your team, if you want great client gifts, if you want to have a unique kind of elevated gift to give someone, we can customize this with your label on the faceplate really easily.
Corporate gifting. That is cool. And it's well within the normal business etiquette of $250. So yeah.
If you're tired of tumblers and bags and pins and you want something people are going to use and remember, and your brand, instead of that red bird, your brand is going to sit on their desk charging and being useful for them every day, I'd love to talk. So you can find me at fledging.tech, or you can find me at ethan@fledging.tech.
Can people find you on LinkedIn?
Yes, I'm all over LinkedIn, posting weird stuff all the time.
That's the best part. We're all weird in some wonderful way, and we should stay that way.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, guys, if you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget there's a little button down there that says subscribe, and then there's a bell next to it. Touch them both. It's one, it gives us more subscribers. Two, it tells you when we get another cool guest like Ethan coming onto a podcast. If you're listening on any of the podcast platforms, make sure you download or subscribe. Do me a favor, leave us a review. Tell us how we're doing. I do try to listen to all of our comments, whether good or not. It doesn't matter. I want to hear from you because it tells us exactly how we can serve you, our listeners. This was another one of those that's loaded with some good nuggets. You got to know somebody that this could probably benefit. Share it. Send them the link, whether it's YouTube or one of the podcast links. Helps get the word out to more people, and share with others that might be dealing with some of the issues that we discuss. Somewhere somebody's going through something, and then they'll hear something from our podcast and they'll be just like, oh, yeah, that's great. So share it with them. We thank you for making the time and taking the time to come and hear us, listen to us, watch us. Make sure you take care of each other. And above all, stay up, stay safe, stay healthy, and live. For myself, Coffee with Mike and Ethan Summers. Ciao for now.
For more information on Java Chat, visit www.javachatpodcast.com. You've been listening